Rev up your engines!
Looks like the old Chinese pulled a fast one here. They did the dirty work nobody wanted to do, turning the raw materials into stuff that can be used for electric batteries, and now they're cashing in on it because China processes the raw material for making batteries. They don't really have them in China. They've bought different mines all over the world, and they bring the raw materials to China where they process them. It's a dirty process that pollutes a lot, so nobody wanted to do it, but now everybody wants the batteries. China's share of processing rare earth minerals that they use in batteries and motors is now 90% of the world's entire processing. Now, any company can get the resources wherever they want, the raw materials, but 90% of them are processed in China. So China, for years, has been doing the dirty processing nobody wants to do, and now they're getting 90% of it in the entire world. They wised on that one. They plan for the future. They're not like the Americans with their chip shortages. They can't even think short term. The Chinese are thinking long term. And I quote, "To reach the targets of the Paris Agreement, the world needs to quadruple its output of materials used in clean technologies in the next 2 decades." So the Paris Agreement is to clean up, use electric vehicles and stuff, right? But making the stuff that they're used for, but making the products that make electric cars being processed in China, that's a very dirty thing. So they're kind of like hiding it in China and then, we're having our clean electric cars here and let them mess up China. That's basically what it comes down to. So if you drive around your clean electric car, you might think twice about what it's doing to the environment in China. But the Chinese are processing them, and they're making a humongous profit. Like I said, they're doing 90% of the world's processing for all these things that electric cars need. Well, Ford is saying we're all in on electric cars. They are targeting 40% electric car sales by 2030. And they say they're going to increase their investment in electric vehicles by 2025 to $30 billion. I'm just amazed. Of course, this is all talk, fantasy, future forecasts, right? They're probably trying to say it so they can kiss the rear end of the administration to get better tax credits for making electric cars. Because there's no infrastructure for electric cars. They're a pain to recharge. I just recently went from Rhode Island to Tennessee back here. What did I see on the road the whole time? I saw one Tesla while I was driving down the highway. Thousands and thousands of cars. I saw one Tesla. It was the only electric car that I saw. You can't really drive cross country with electric cars. It'd be a giant pain in the rear end. Plus, say 40% of the cars are electric. Where's the power coming from? You know? They get into this fantasy, we're planning on doing this. Yeah, well, who's going to back the infrastructure? Nobody's going to be building new power plants. They cost too much money. There's no sense for a capitalist economy, somebody who invests in something that has a very low return. I don't see it happening anytime soon, and not by 2030 either. And I quote Jim Farley, the head of Ford. "This is our biggest opportunity for growth and value creation since Henry Ford started to scale the Model T." Total nonsense. Like I say, there's no infrastructure for this stuff. They're going to build cars. People are going to say, ugh. Look, in California already, 20% of the people in the land of California, where everything's supposed to be futuristic, right? 20% of electric cars are getting rid of them. And that's in a place where there's a reasonable amount of charging stations. You can forget it. I know a guy in Canada who bought one. He got rid of it after a couple of years. He said it was such a pain. It didn't work good in the cold weather. It was a pain to charge up. Let's see. Everybody's going to be driving these things soon. No, not really. And these fantasies of what they're going to do 9 years from now, Americans can barely plan 2 days ahead of time. Now, if it was the Chinese saying it, I kind of think maybe that's true. Because it's a communist country. They can force everybody to go electric by saying no more gas stations. They're shutting them all down, only electric stations. And we're going to build all these power plants. But if you really look at China, most of their electricity comes from coal, which is extremely polluting. So don't think that it's cleaning anything up running electric cars when you're burning coal to make the electricity. I'm not holding my breath anytime soon to see that half the cars that Ford's selling are going to be electric cars. I think it's just another pipe dream made by CEOs who don't know what they're doing, allied with politicians who blow whichever way the wind is blowing. They bend to the left if the wind's blowing that way. They blend to the right. Let's see what happens by 2030. You know, I'm not holding my breath on this one. And Busky81 says, "Hi, I got a 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee 5.7 Hemi. I followed all my AC lines under the hood, but can't find the expansion valve. Do you know where the location is?" Yeah, and you're not going to like it. Chrysler has some of the worst designed air conditioning systems in the world. They always have, and they probably always will. Your expansion valve is inside the dash. You got to take it all apart. Disconnect the lines. Take the whole assembly out. The evaporator inside. It is an expensive. Some guys charge over $1,000 labor for doing that. One of the worst designs on earth. Now, you say you have limited AC. Pray it's just low on refrigerant. Pay a mechanic like me to evacuate the whole system out and then refill it with a factory load of AC refrigerant and pray that fixes it. That often does. So 2012, they often lose refrigerant over time. They all leak a little bit over time. Even Toyotas. I had to refill my son's Corolla that was 6 years old because it only got to halfway. And once it got to halfway, the compressor shut off. So I just added it until it was full and it worked perfectly fine. So try that first, because if you got to replace that expansion valve, what an expensive job on that rolling pile of junk design. Peter Banda says, I'm suspecting my car's a short circuit. Drains the battery in a short period of time. I changed the battery, but it didn't work. I hooked up a circuit tester and the light came on. I removed fuses one at a time. The light never went off. What other can I test for? You definitely got a short. But modern cars are so complex. You really have to use a good meter, not just a test light, a meter. I've got a video on that, finding shorts on your car. Scotty, just Google that on YouTube. Watch that video. You can buy a really nice testing device for about $60. And it's pretty easy to test those things. If it's not one of the fuses, there are unfused things like your starter, alternator. There's a lot of stuff that isn't fused too, but testing it that way, you'll see the actual milliamp drain. And if you have more than 35 milliamp drain, and certainly you do because it's drained the battery, you'll be able to find it out that way. Fixing electrical shorts on your car, Scotty. Just watch that video. Buy the little tool. Dan says, how low will Toyota go? I started seeing a lot of rusting and cracking clutch forks on their manual gearboxes. I think Toyota's given up. He's got a picture and I can see where the clutch arm goes in, it's completely rusted out. I really miss the 2012-13 Corolla 1.65 speed. I miss it when we had cars that the only lifelong thing was the car itself. Well, I gotta agree. It's unfortunate now. You see the clutch arms rusting. Not that many people drive standard cars in the United States anymore. It's something like 96% drive automatic. So obviously they have cheapened out on the parts they're putting in the standard transmission cars because that clutch fork was all rusted out. And there's no way it should be rusted out like that. I've had cars that were 30 years old and they weren't rusted out like that. It's unfortunate, but all these companies now, they're just going for the cheap. I'll give you a perfect analogy of that is the Fords. A bunch of Fords, now they're trucks, you get them brand new, and the rear ends are all covered in rust. Parts are all covered in rust. Now it's a superficial rust, but let's face it, it's a brand new truck. You buy a brand new truck, you go in there and you see it all rust. That's lack of quality because they didn't used to be that when they were brand new. They'd rust after years, but you see them brand new and they're rusted. They're just making them cheaper, and it's unfortunate, but that's the way the cookie crumbles these days. Like Obi says, I have high revs before my car shifts gears. I got a 2000 Camry, gear first and second. It revs high before it changes speed. It's got over 200,000 miles. Can I live with it, or will I have to rebuild the tranny? It's obviously wearing. That's the first gear to wear out. But it is a Toyota Camry. So here's what I advise you to do. Take 1 quart of transmission fluid out, just one. Then put in 1 quart of Lucas Automatic Transmission anti-slip additive and give it 300 miles of driving. I've seen it fix them. If it doesn't, then just live with it. Rebuilding that transmission is going to cost you more than a car's worth. Try that. It often helps. And if it doesn't, but it keeps going, just keep driving it. I've had people driving 5 years that way, and they rev up high first to second, especially when cold, better once they warm up. Then you could live with it. But the Lucas anti-shutter fix a lot of times can help those things. Ford is recalling over 200,000 Ford Transit models because they might roll away. Turns out that when they built the shifters on automatic transmission, there's bushings in there, and the bushings aren't made right. They heat up, melt, crack, and then when you put it in park, it's not really in park, so the vehicle can roll away. I find this rather amusing because I owned a 1970 Ford Maverick, and it had shifter bushing problems. Now, I only paid $500 for it, and when I road tested it, one of the bushings broke. And my friend said, "You gonna buy this thing?" I said, "What the heck? That's a simple thing to fix." So I bought it for $500. Put new bushings in, and about every year they would break, so I had a package of bushings in the trunk. And when they broke, I'd just crawl under and I'd snap new ones, and it didn't take me long. I'm a mechanic. But you'd think Ford would learn something in the last 50 years, but I guess they haven't. Now, this is 2013 to 2021 Ford Transit. Now, realize if you ever do think you have a problem with your car, get your VIN number, vehicle identification number, get it. Go to the National Highway Traffic Safety Association.org website, type it in, it'll tell you if there's any recalls on your vehicle. Now, this is for 2013 to 2021 Trans Advance. They have to replace the bushings, but also they're supposed to add a cable to hide the bushing so that it doesn't get worn again and break. Obviously, it was a design flaw. They obviously didn't put anything in to cover it because they weren't thinking. Probably had it on the older ones and then decided, let's make them cheaper. We'll get rid of that. We don't need that. And then boom, it breaks. I just find it totally amazing that 50 years later, they got the same shifter bushing problems that my Maverick had back in 1970. You'd think they'd learn. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.